On a quiet weekday morning, the courtroom felt more like a hushed church than a place of judgment. A tall black woman in handcuffs rose and took her seat at the defense table, her posture straight, her gaze steady beyond the judge's bench. The bailiff's boots tapped on the polished floor. Jurors shifted uneasily in their leather chairs. Reporters clicked pens as if the next sound might break the spell. Across the aisle, the officer who brought her here stood at the lectern uniform, sharp badge glinting. He spoke in practiced tones, claiming she struck him without warning during what he called a routine traffic stop. His story unfolded in slow, deliberate beats, each pause inviting nods from the jury. The prosecutor seized the opening, reminding everyone that her silence spoke volumes. It's not merely what she said, he intoned, but what she chose not to say. Her attorney, weary and underpaid, rose to plead for mercy, a soft suggestion of stress, a hint at misunderstanding, but no real evidence. The judge, gray-haired and solemn, barely glanced her way, his face a stone mask as though he had already delivered his verdict in his mind. To the onlookers, she seemed an open and shut case, another defendant in the revolving door of law and order. Yet hidden beneath that orange jumpsuit was something no one guessed. This was no ordinary citizen on trial. She was a covert CIA field officer embedded on a classified assignment. Every measured breath, every gentle clasp of her hands was part of a larger plan to draw out the very forces that believed they could silence her. In that stillness lay the spark of a trap quietly set against a system unaccustomed to being watched so closely or challenged so cleverly. Long before her name appeared on the docket, she had been quietly assembling a mountain of proof against a network of biased enforcers. Posing as an unremarkable local resident, she spent months following whisper-thin trails of injustice, families who never recovered, missing loved ones, citizens pushed into baseless arrests in patrol cars whose dash cams failed at crucial moments. Every fragment, an internal affairs memo marked, filed away an emailed order to seal a complaint, was another piece of a tightly woven tapestry, implicating one man most of all, the officer who'd accused her in this very courtroom. His record gleamed on paper, no blemishes, no reprimands. But in hushed corridors, she found the truth: internal documents showing repeated complaints, each quietly dismissed. Audio recordings of off-the-books meetings in dimly lit precinct basements, and financial notices hinting at payoffs for silence. Disguised as a nervous witness, she volunteered to help draft routine motions, all the while ensuring her own copies of critical files landed safely off-site. She tracked unmarked surveillance vans tailing peaceful protesters and noted their plate numbers. When a camera's hard drive malfunctioned, she secured a clandestine backup from an IT specialist with a conscience. Her federal handlers, prosecutors, and agents pored over her reports, lining up freeze orders and subpoenas timed to erupt the moment she broke cover. To the casual observer, she was just the calm, silent defendant in orange, another name in a packed docket. But behind her composed exterior is the keystone of an operation designed to reveal how unchecked authority hides behind uniform and protocol. Every confident pause, every refusal to plead guilty was part of her design. She held those hidden files close, ready to unleash them at the precise instant when biased power met its match in cold hard evidence. And all the while, she waited steady, patient, certain that this silent strategy would bring the truth roaring into the open. When the judge announces a brief recess, the courtroom seems to exhale, only to hold its breath again. In that stillness, she stands. No hesitation, no plea. She simply rises and walks forward. The petite briefcase she carries isn't a prop, but a vault of undeniable proof. Grainy audio of that officer's private laughter at black witnesses, a thread of emails exposing the judge's whispered promises to bury complaints, and bank records tracing hush money payments straight into the courthouse coffers. With a single deliberate nod, she places the case on the bench and submits herself under oath, not as a frightened defendant, but as the investigator in command. Bailiffs exchange startled glances. Prosecutors flatten their notes, mouths agape. The video monitors sputter to life, projecting hidden conversations once thought lost forever. Jurors lean forward in their seats. Some reporters drop their pens. No cries erupt, no gavel slams shatter the moment. Instead, a profound quiet takes hold, as if the very walls have been forced to listen. The ritual of courtroom performance, sharp robes, clipped statements, rehearsed rhetoric melts away under the weight of raw documentation. Uniformed officers, once the unquestioned sentinels of order, shift uncomfortably. The judge, who had barely glanced at her before, looks on now with stunned uncertainty. In that charged pause, the narrative flips. The woman in orange is no longer on trial. She is the arbiter of justice, the one who holds indisputable truth in her hands. Those who once controlled the story, police, lawyers, judge, find themselves exposed, their misconduct laid bare for all to see. And though no doors burst open or sirens wail, power itself has been unmasked in a single unbroken moment of quiet clarity. By midday, federal agents move in like a quiet storm, sealing off the precinct, posting notices on locked doors, and escorting officers into waiting vehicles. Patrick Lang's badge is torn from his uniform. He's led away without ceremony. High above the judge's chambers lie closed under a layer of official tape, its doors barred for an independent inquiry. Outside news crews flash headlines, systemic corruption exposed in Pinehurst trial. Neighbors spill onto the courthouse steps, survivors of past injustices, long-silenced activists, veterans who once carried guns abroad, all standing together to file petitions demanding a complete, unflinching investigation. City council members hustle to draft emergency ordinances, and the mayor's office leaps into action with promises of open records and community oversight. Amid the swirl of cameras and civic fury, she remains a silent sentinel, arms folded, eyes alert for any sign of a cover-up. She neither raises her voice nor accepts applause, because her mission was never personal glory. It was to awaken a system that had grown numb to its own failures. Inside, an independent review board opens hundreds of cases once dismissed in shadowed backrooms. District attorneys known for turning a blind eye are quietly replaced. Mandatory bias training spreads through every corner of law enforcement and courthouse staff, challenging each person to confront assumptions they never realized they'd made. On the courthouse steps, a modest bronze plaque appears, its simple inscription reading, "In memory of dignity." No grand monument, only a reminder that respect begins when we pause to question our own presumptions rather than enforce them. And when the dust settles, she steps forward once more, this time to lead a newly formed civil rights division, staffed by lawyers, social workers, and community advocates. Without fanfare, she accepts her next assignment to ensure that every face in Pinehurst, no matter how ordinary, can trust that the system will finally see them. Her message echoes through the streets: no one, no matter how powerful, escapes scrutiny forever. By the time the dust from Pinehurst's initial reckoning settled, a new storm was gathering, one that reached all the way to the state attorney general's office. A secretly recorded conversation at a high-end fundraiser leaked online, capturing him boasting about feeding convictions to the public while moving the real pieces behind the curtain. Overnight, civil rights organizations mobilized, demanding a full federal investigation. Television news anchors played the tape on repeat, and opinion columns accused the administration of managed justice. Unfazed by the mounting pressure or the whispered threats that followed each late-night phone call, she took charge of the next phase. Quietly, she liaised with Department of Justice officials, drafting grand jury subpoenas and vetting witnesses who had long feared retaliation. Witness preparation became an art of reassurance, a gentle reminder that their courage today could save lives tomorrow. While headlines screamed of political scandal, she worked in hushed conference rooms and behind locked doors, ensuring every shred of evidence, bank ledgers, internal memos, audio files, was ready for court. Through it all, she remained invisible to the public, a steady force pushing the wheels of accountability. She refused interviews and avoided the spotlight, believing that the facts themselves must carry the day. And carry they did, one by one. Sealed documents were unsealed, past convictions overturned, and officials once trusted to serve and protect found themselves under subpoena. In the weeks that followed, Pinehurst watched as walls of power shook from City Hall to the state capitol. Emergency sessions of the legislature were called, and bipartisan pledges for ethics reform filled the air. Yet at no point did she raise her voice. Her impact spoke volumes. Each document freed, each case reopened, served as proof of a single truth: justice begins when silence ends. And in that revelation, one undercover agent's unyielding purpose and patient resolve became the catalyst for change across every level of governance. Across the country, in a city far from Pinehurst's upheaval, a seasoned lawman in his late 50s prepared to tackle a precinct long plagued by bias complaints. Rather than stride in as chief, he chose a subtler path, enrolling undercover as an ordinary trainee. Dressed down in plain jeans and scuffed boots, he blended into morning roll calls and water cooler banter. Within days, two self-styled alpha officers zeroed in on him, mocking his age, questioning whether he could handle even a desk job, and finally taping him to a wall as a middle-of-the-hallway prank. He could have revealed his rank, shut down the ridicule with a curt reprimand, and sent those officers packing. Instead, he sat and let it happen quietly, noting every look of triumph in their eyes, every smirk shared with onlookers, every off-color joke whispered under breath. Each humiliation was a fresh entry in his mental dossier, the raw data of a culture that celebrated dominance over decency. Meanwhile, younger officers watched in awkward silence. Some offered furtive glances, others simply shook their heads when the alpha duo wasn't looking. Their uneasy sympathy gave him another clue. Beneath bravado lay a force-fed fear of speaking up. He filed those observations alongside his own notes from morning briefings and after-hours lockups, building proof that the department's locker room culture wasn't confined to barroom banter, but affected daily policing. He never lost his composure. When the prank ended and the tape was cut down, he dusted off his jeans and shook out his hair. No bitterness, no complaint. To onlookers, he remained the unflappable rookie. To himself, he was the future chief, gathering the evidence needed to overhaul procedures, institute genuine sensitivity training, and restore respect to the badge. Behind that calm endurance lay a conviction true reform begins when hidden hierarchies are exposed. And so he waited, patient, observant, and determined, until the time came to reveal what he had quietly learned. In the days that followed his unveiling, the new lieutenant chose restoration over reprimand. He privately summoned the two alpha officers to his modest office. No badge flash, no raised voice, just calm authority. He laid out the evidence he had quietly collected, their own words, their own pranks, each a mark against the precinct's honor. Then he offered them a clear path forward: mandatory leadership and sensitivity training paired with community outreach assignments in neighborhoods long underserved. He explained that real strength lay in listening, learning the stories of the people they served and the officers they led. Those once brazen tormentors found themselves driving youth diversion programs and visiting senior centers, shaking hands instead of cracking jokes. They discovered that empathy could build more trust than intimidation ever would. Word spread through the squad room: hazing was out, mentoring was in. Younger deputies who had watched their colleagues' misconduct with silent unease now felt permission to speak up when they witnessed bias or bullying. Under his steady guidance, teamwork replaced the old hierarchy of fear. Roll calls began with officers sharing neighborhood concerns rather than macho banter. Critical feedback made its way up the chain without retribution. In just a few weeks, the precinct's morale lifted, citizen complaints dropped, and new recruits spoke of pride rather than anxiety. By addressing the problem at its root, unseen power plays, and unchallenged aggression, the lieutenant demonstrated that lasting reform depends not on spectacle or shouting, but on principled leadership, quiet accountability, and the courage to rebuild respect from the ground up. These two parallel stories, one of a covert agent uprooting systemic corruption, the other of a seasoned officer transforming his own precinct, illuminate a single enduring truth: lasting justice is not wrought through grandstanding or the loudest voice in the room, but through deliberate, courageous measures taken in quiet conviction. In that hush of the courtroom, the undercover officer's unbroken stillness and unwavering purpose laid bare a web of deceit far more potent than any raised fist or shouted protest. She revealed document by document that abuses of power thrive in the spaces where silence goes unchallenged. Likewise, in the precinct far from City Hall, the veteran's decision to slip into anonymity and patiently collect evidence of everyday cruelties demonstrated that accountability often begins with listening, bearing witness to others' experiences without interruption, and acting on what one learns even when no one else is watching. Both narratives show that real authority stems from integrity, not intimidation. When the courtroom's ritual of deference to uniform and robe was upended by a single flash of a badge, it became clear that titles can shield wrongdoing only so long as the system remains complacent. And when the precinct's old guard confronted their new chief, they found that respect once given yields far more cooperation than coercion ever could. In each case, the protagonist did not seek the spotlight. They chose the strategic moment to unmask injustice, then stepped aside, letting principles speak for themselves. For older Americans who remember quieter struggles for civil rights and community reform, these stories will resonate deeply. They remind us that progress rarely comes wrapped in fanfare. It grows from steadfast resolve, the courage to stand still until the moment is right, and the wisdom to know that a whispered truth can echo louder than a tirade. Whether in courtrooms or neighborhood beats, every individual, no matter how ordinary they may feel, can ignite change by holding fast to honesty and compassion. In the end, it is our collective willingness to question assumptions, to speak when it matters, and to refuse complicity that ensures dignity reclaims its voice, one quiet act of accountability at a time. 2 years on the courthouse no longer feels like the same building. The steps are worn smooth by countless respectful pauses. Officers, residents, even visitors placing flowers beneath the "In Memory of Dignity" plaque. The Independent Commission's work has rippled into neighboring counties. Sarasota and Pendleton have adopted their own quiet truth protocols, and a national task force references the case in training manuals across the country. The Civil Rights Division she founded now partners with tech firms to analyze body cam data in real time, flagging misconduct before it goes unreported. Community forums have evolved into regular justice councils where students, clergy, and retired officers review cold cases and propose policy tweaks, every recommendation logged online for public accountability. A statewide database tracks missing persons with transparent case notes, ensuring no file vanishes into a drawer. Meanwhile, the former judge's name has been scrubbed from plaques and buildings. The ex-officer works as a civilian mechanic, his badge gathering dust in a forgotten locker. As for the woman whose silence set it all in motion, she occasionally visits Pinehurst under an alias to mentor young agents and community leaders, always from the shadows, always listening more than speaking. Her legacy now includes a scholarship for students of color, entering law and intelligence work in a small library of memoirs from those whose voices were once silenced. 2 years later, the story lives not in headlines, but in the steady heartbeat of a community that learned to question before presuming and to honor quiet courage as the truest catalyst for lasting change. From this story, we learn that justice is not wielded by force or swords, but often by patient, deliberate silence. When abuses of power are exposed not through harsh words, but through clear evidence and composed resolve, we understand the value of timing our actions and reinforcing faith that truth will overcome prejudice. If I were the protagonist, I would continue to expand oversight and training programs, collaborating with civil organizations to ensure similar injustices can no longer be hidden. I would advocate for policies that strengthen checks and balances on authority and promote civic education about individual rights and responsibilities. As for whether racism will end by 2050, I believe that while we may not completely eradicate all biases, if each person and every community persistently combats prejudice with knowledge, empathy, and a fair legal system, then by mid-century we can create a more tolerant society where individuals are judged by their character, not their skin color.